Everybody?
Meetings in order.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Katrina Bashirs, and I am a social worker with the Community Engagement and Partnership Coordinator Program with Suicide Prevention at Detroit VA. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We're really excited about the opportunity to talk about a very important topic for our community, which includes our veterans, service members, and mental health, and the benefits that you do have earned and deserved, and so we thank you so much. We've got some people still in the back that are accessing some of the great resources, so we want to thank everybody who came out to spend their time with us this evening to share your resources, and hopefully we can get some good information. We've got some great speakers and panelists that are coming through, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to take a moment to just recognize our veterans or service members at this point. Has anyone served? If you've served, would you kindly mind raising your hand so we can acknowledge you? Thank you so much. Is anyone a family member of a service member, have a loved one? Yeah, okay, great. So that's almost all of us in the room. This is a population of people that are very near and dear to my heart, even though I didn't suit up and boot up and all that jazz. Daughter, sister, future mother-in-law, cousin of service members. So thank you so much for what you do. We recognize that not only do you serve, but your families, your communities serve alongside of you. It's a sacrifice that you've given, and we thank you for that very much. Okay, so another point that I want to make is sometimes during interesting topics that sometimes can get sensitive, some of us start to feel a couple different unique feelings. If you feel triggered or feel a little uncomfortable, we want you to take care of yourself. So if we've got water, we've got snacks, there's restrooms, we've got people in the room that if you need to just say, I need to scoot out, please feel free to do so. No judgment here. Just this is for our good, for all of us. So if you need, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with the program. We've got a couple speakers that are going to highlight some really wonderful things. And first up, we have Mr. Bill Browning from the Detroit VA Hospital. I'm gonna turn it over to you, Bill.
You're applauding her, I hope, right? I'm going to try to get my presentation because there is a PowerPoint, and I'm going to try not to bore you with that. Let's see. Okay, I have the daunting task of presenting the PACT Act. Let me just be a show of hands right now. Who has heard of the PACT Act? Raise it. Okay. The PACT Act. The PACT Act is an acronym that stands for the Promise to Acknowledge Comprehensive Toxins. It's a long, drawn-out word to kind of help us recognize the exposures to hazards, both physical, environmental, while folks are in service time. Could be either in combat or peacetime. So, as you know, and this will transition easily into my presentation here, but you may or may not know that 1 in 3 veterans, 1 in 3 of those have been, more than 1 in 3 have been reported they have been experienced toxic exposures, such as airborne hazards, open burn pits, Gulf War-related exposures, Agent Orange, radiation, and contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. This is all considered under the PACT Act as being recognized as exposures, and it leads to presumptive conditions. But what the PACT Act also does, it kind of defines some of these things. It gives the broad term of military environmental exposure that includes a variety of these things, as I mentioned earlier. But there can be nuclear, chemical, physical, such as sound, vibration, noise, and X-rays. And they're also be in deployment or in garrison. So either, as I said earlier, either you had these during combat or as in peacetime. But there are military environmental agents that have the potential to cause adverse health effects, and that's what the PACT Act is recognizing and turning into what veterans have been telling VA and their family members and their doctors for years, that their conditions were a result of their service time. So what the PACT Act has done is turn these chemical environments. This is kind of gives you a sort of a rough idea of where they are. This defines specific ones to specific areas. As you see, herbicides of Agent Orange, I think, is one of the signature ones is most folks are familiar with. Air pollutants like burn pits, I think a lot of folks are familiar with burn pits where they've heard about stories from the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. But burn pits we have a long history of military have gotten rid of things, have kind of destroyed their equipment, both supplies. They, instead of bringing these back to garrison with them, they've destroyed them in field. So, and then there are occupational hazards, asbestos. I think there's a long history of that for folks who serve service time on ships. And in other conditions with that have gone in with military posts and barracks. Asbestos was a major contributor to a lot of these conditions because they were used in a lot of construction and a lot of agents in that. So as I talked earlier, there are presumptive conditions that the PACT Act has identified. There's more than 20. As you can see there on the screen, I'm not going to read all those through for you, but it's made a number of these conditions as a matter of fact. So if you are in the geographic areas as mentioned under the PACT Act and you have these conditions as a result, you are at that point being considered as service connected with the issue that you have developed. And also what the PACT Act has done is basically made the healthcare options available to a number of different veterans, particularly those who've served in combat. There's a category 1, those veterans who participate in toxic exposure risk activity as defined by law while serving in active duty training or inactive duty training. And then there's a category 2, those are assigned to a duty station, including airspace above certain locations during specific periods of time. And you can see the periods of time there in August of 1990, and in the geographic areas there, mostly in the Middle East. And then from September 11th, 2001, the areas notified in that slide there. Then category 3, there's veterans that are deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Freedom Sentinel, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation New Dawn. These are a number of the ones that have started since 2001, and with the war on terror, and the VA has now considered these areas as part of the PACT Act and will be recognized as far as healthcare is concerned. Under categories 1 and 2, the list of the eligibility for those being discharged or released between August 2nd, 1990 and September 11, 2001. That started as early as this coming fall in October 1st. As you can see, there's a trend there moving forward, a schedule of expanded eligibility for these conditions and for these combat areas for those veterans servicing in those periods. And again, the expanded healthcare eligibility between October 21st and October 1st of 2023. Veterans served on active duty in theater or combat operations during the period of war in Persian Gulf, or combat against hostile force during a period of hostilities after November 11, 1998. This reads like a law, as you can see right here. There's no thereas or wherewithins, but as you can see there, it outlines the periods that these veterans are now become eligible for health care under VA. And this covers VA health care head to toe for services at any VA healthcare center in the nation. And then the Vietnam era eligibility for healthcare pretty much follows the same guidance as the ones previously mentioned. This is dating it back from the periods of from January of 1962 all the way up to May of 1975. And then it also opens up a few other areas like Thailand, Laos, certain provinces in Cambodia, Guam, American Samoa, all the way up to 1980, and the Johnson Atoll, or ship there within, between 1972, January 1972, and September of 1977. So filing and processing claims, VA will, when contact veterans who were considered presumptive, have those issues based on their health care, either with VA or without VA. If these issues are made available and known to VA, VA will help provide the establishment of the claims through the act there, the VA Form 200995 that provides a decision to review requests. I think Mr. Easterling will get more into how this is being conducted, if I'm right, Gary. I'm just pointing to you right now because I know you're going to be talking about claims quite a bit, but the point about claims is that you shouldn't go it alone if you're a veteran. Usually is the best thing to do is to have an advocate work on your behalf and to help you navigate through some of the, not only the paperwork, but some of the definitions of what your service time meant and what the conditions you have may have been a result of that. And filing a claim here, you can see I've provided a list of these. American Legion here, if you see AmericanLegion.org. The services, and Mr. Easterling is part of the American Legion State of Michigan. He oversees a lot of the training for the service officers in the state. But most counties have service officers also located that will be able to help you navigate through the claims process, which is a big part of the PACT Act. So gaining access for us, for VA, starting in November of last year, we started what we call the toxic exposure screening. And what that is, it helps us identify veterans with exposure concerns and advises them how to connect with benefits and resources and services. Veterans will be asked a number of questions about potential exposure to an open burn pit or other hazards commonly associated with military environment exposure. Not part of the VA benefits claims process, so you will have to undergo this through VA in order to be recognized with this. And this is only done through VHA, and that's the Veterans Health Administration. And VA must do a toxic exposure screening for all enrolled veterans as a requirement by the PACT Act, and once every 5 years thereafter. Screenings take about 5 to 10 minutes, and if a veteran has exposure concerns, VA will provide the next steps and how to get additional resource connections from that point on. These are some sites that give you some information about military exposures, open burn pits. There's a number of these registries located on the web. And this is a sort of a short slide talking about the toxic exposure screening. As you mentioned, this is only done at VA medical centers right now. We are doing some of these in some of the outreach we're doing since October of last year. But we're taking a toxic exposure navigator with us and doing these screenings along. And then we're trying to determine firsthand whether or not the person, the veteran who's before us, will be eligible for this so that the process will be that much more truncated and much more direct in getting them into the system. Top of the screen there, va.gov/PACT is really the great resource. It has everything you need. It has information about PACT. It has all the information I shared with you about presumptive illnesses and whatnot, about conditions developed from related to service time. It also gets you into VA healthcare, help you submit a claim also on there. As I mentioned earlier, try not to do this on your own. Work at as an advocate, work with an advocate from a veteran service organization or a service officer. And then you can learn more just by calling that number there, 1-800-MY-VA-411. And then there's the Airborne Hazards and Open Burn Pit Registry there too, if you want to learn more about those. So that's all I have. I tried to squeeze in about a 30-minute slideshow in about 10 minutes. I'm sorry if I might have skipped over a few things, but I will be on station for the rest of the evening. If you have any questions, please stop by. Love to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. And I apologize if I didn't appropriately introduce you. You are the Chief of Volunteer Services and Community Relations, yes, and a veteran. We love those long titles. Yes, we love the long titles. And now we have switched slides, and we are, of course, there's a blackout screen. The next person who is up is Mr. Gary Easterling, who is the Director of American Legion and is also a veteran. And you do many things, and I want to appropriately pull up your PowerPoint. And of course, I'm having some technical issues. Thank you so much for coming to my rescue. Oh, here it is. You got it. Good job. Thanks.
Is that mine?
That's yours. Yeah, that's your title slide. Go.
I don't. She changed it up on me.
No, I only.
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening. I know it's somewhere in there. I'm Gary Easterling. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for the American Legion, not the Director of the American Legion. My boss would probably have a field day with that one. But no, my job is to help and guide veterans through the VA process. I do not work for the VA. I do not work for the government. I work for a nonprofit, and we offer our services for free. I have 23 veteran service officers all across the state. We help any veteran anywhere, anytime. My big motto, I know I'm here with the VA and I work very well with these people. I love them. We go all over the place and do a lot of things, but I always tell people, don't face the VA alone. Like Mr. Browning said, there's all kinds of ways you can process a claim through the VA system. You can do it on your own. Go on the VA website, submit the paperwork. You can hire an attorney. You can get, the best way to do it is get a veteran service officer, either from a service organization or from your county. But we can do a lot of things, and we do it for free. All right. Can I get on the internet from here? I can't. I had a video for you, but oh, it's not even changing. It's not even changing. We have to have it on the slide presentation.
Try that again.
There we go. Maybe. Perfect, Bill.
That's the next one. There you go.
There we go. I want to show you a quick video of a Vietnam veteran that we helped. Of course, you're not connected to the internet, are you, Bill? That's all right. So we are made up, we're the Michigan Veterans Coalition. We have 4 organizations that do what we do here in the state of Michigan. We got the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Disabled American Veterans, and the Vietnam Veterans of America. All together, we have 75 veteran service officers all across the state. Here, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County, we have about 30 veteran service officers just in this area. So we are available to help and assist veterans and their families through the VA process. This is what we do best. These are the things that we can help a veteran, and if they qualify for these, this is what we do. We got the service connection, aid and attendance, non-service connected pension. We help with individual unemployability. We got special monthly compensation. Chapter 35, permanent total. We help with burial benefits at National Cemetery. We help with education benefits. We even help veterans get enrolled in the VA healthcare. We help all the survivors of veterans to see what they qualify for. And there's also some ancillary benefits that we can also point the veteran in the right direction. So this is our oh, you can't see it. We have 75 veteran service officers across the state. We have 148 different offices across the state that we have a veteran service officer in. We provide over 10,000 hours of service a month. And last year, we helped veterans in the state of Michigan bring back over $75 million in tax-free money for veterans in the state of Michigan. So it's a very gratifying job that we do. And tell you a quick story that we just had a veteran, one of my service officers, Lisa did, an older gentleman. He just wanted to get hearing aids from the VA. That's all he wanted. Okay, so Lisa talked to him a little bit about his job he did in the service, and ended up filing a hearing loss and a tinnitus claim for this veteran. A few weeks later, the veteran come back, was crying because he got awarded the 10% benefit for tinnitus, and he had like a back pay check of like $600 from the VA in his bank account, and he thought Lisa was the greatest thing on earth. Of course, I wasn't there to contradict that statement, but no, so that's the kind of things that it just makes this job of what we do phenomenal. It's just to help these veterans. So here is our website, miveteranbenefits.org. We have one phone number to reach any one of the service organizations, and here it is. And I have some flyers down on my table with all this information on it. So you can reach out and touch any one of us now. Instead of 4 different phone numbers, you just have one. And that is not my slide. So I do appreciate you having me here. We do some great things together. We go all over and do some wonderful things. I just want to leave you guys with one thought before I leave. And some of you all know that I always have stories to tell. But just think about this as you leave tonight and you go outside and it starts getting dark, a lot of stars up in the cloud, up in the sky. Think of this. The Army and the Marines sleep under them. The Navy navigates by them. And the Air Force rates their hotels on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Easterling. You are a joy, and we just really appreciate your fervor for helping our service members. And I think one of the things that I love, you can see how you and Bill work together, and you said how VSOs and VA, how we can actually really work together to help our service members. And the more we can pull it all in, the better we help our folks. So thank you so much for that. Now we're going to have Dr. Megan Wade, who's a psychologist, and she's also an Oakland County Reserve police officer, and she is going to grace us with her presence today and knowledge. Thank you.
So I don't have a PowerPoint. You just get to hear me talk because that's what I do for a living. So I'm just going to give a very, very general, very brief kind of presentation on what happens to our body and our minds when we experience significant trauma, some special considerations we need to think of when we think of military veterans, active duty, who also experience stress and trauma. So generally speaking, when our bodies go into fight or flight, that can happen for any emotion, right? But also it happens a lot in the military for quite literally survival reasons, right? If you're in combat, you go into fight or flight for survival. When that happens, the back part of your brain, where it connects to your spinal cord, takes control. It's called our lizard brain. All animals have it because all animals need and want to survive. When that gets activated, it tells other parts of our brain that you can go to sleep right now. You're important in life, but you're not necessary for survival right here, right now. The main reason that's super important, because one of the first places that shuts off is our frontal lobe, the part right behind our forehead, which is the part of our brain that helps us understand information, take in data, organize it, understand what's happening in our body, and choose a response. In the moment, we don't need it, but it's nice to have it kind of in the big picture. So what's happening is the part of our brain that organizes information is turned off, but all of the information's still coming in, right? So you experience a trauma, all that data is entering your body, but it's not being organized by anything. So that's where some of the symptoms of PTSD, depression, anxiety come from. So when we're thinking about PTSD, there's a couple of different symptoms that happen. So you experience a trauma. That is by definition what PTSD is from, post-trauma disorder, all right? Then we have something called intrusive symptoms. So all that data is in your brain. It wants to be organized, but no one's doing it. So it kind of pops out at you at random times when it thinks it has time, when it thinks it has space, when something reminds you of it. All right, so you'll get those intrusive memories that come in. You'll remember a piece of the situation, or your body will activate and you'll get really sweaty, or your heart will start beating, that kind of stuff. So we have things called intrusive symptoms. Then we have something called avoidance. So none of the stuff that comes with trauma feels good. So instead of sitting with it and feeling it, we shove it down deep in a corner because we don't want to deal with it because it doesn't feel good, right? So we do things like when the thought comes up, we purposefully distract ourselves. We don't let ourselves think about stuff. Or if there's a specific person, place, thing that reminds us of the situation, we don't interact with it. We take the long road around the bridge where the thing happened, or we don't talk to a person or a group of people anymore. We avoid them because we don't want to be reminded of the situation. Then we have changes to our thoughts and our mood, right? So with avoidance, we shut everything down. And the thing with emotions, if we're not willing to experience the uncomfortable ones, you can't experience the fun ones either. So you kind of go into this numb place where it's just flat line, right? We're not really experiencing highs, we're not really experiencing lows. So that's gonna change how your mood is. It's gonna feel very just blah. You may feel depressed, right? You may find it difficult to engage with other people. May also change your thoughts, because a lot of the time, the trauma is either proving a point that you had that doesn't look at the world very well, or it completely contradicts everything you thought you knew, and now you're trying to adjust to all that new information. So the thoughts change because of the trauma, our mood changes because of the trauma. Then we've got something called hyperarousal, which is the last category. That's when your body responds as if the trauma were happening again. So we hear kind of stereotypically, especially during like 4th of July, which is coming up, those fireworks, those big loud noises, veterans hitting the deck, hitting the ground, not wanting to go outside, having like really really big jump responses, right? Our body thinks it's in trauma again, so it starts reacting as if it is, even if it doesn't make sense with what's actually happening. Right? So that's kind of what's happening in your brain and your body when you experience trauma, and that's how it can lead to PTSD. Not everyone who experiences trauma develops PTSD. It kind of comes from a lot of different factors, but that's something that can play into it. So that's where we kind of come into the military culture piece. So as we think of military population, we know they're at a higher rate of experiencing trauma than the general population. Side effect of the job. There's also some other factors, some environmental factors that will also influence the rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety, stuff like that, that are also unique to military populations. So if we're thinking about how the military teaches soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, right, how to deal with emotions, it's not always productive. It's very mission focused. It helps you get the job done in that moment, but it's not really productive if you're not on mission. They're teaching you to kind of just shove it down, get the job done. We don't need to sit with that, right? Which is good for the moment, but in the long term, you need to be able and willing to sit with those emotions to get through the situation. So they're not really trained on how to sit with their emotions. They're actively taught, don't sit with your emotions. So we may need to think about that as we're doing therapy with them. We also need to consider something called moral injury, right? So sometimes people, while they're engaging in military activities, are doing stuff that in their brain they don't like or don't agree with. This can be a bunch of different things. That means that it's gonna sit with them a little bit different because they violated their moral code. So they start thinking they are bad people, right? That's gonna sit a little bit differently than some other types of trauma. It can also lead to them not feeling like civilian populations understand, because most civilians don't understand what combat is like. So if they're trying to get support, the civilian population may actively judge them, be fearful of them, or just straight up not get it. They may not be able to sit with it with them, right? Which kind of leads to the last point as well, is that when we're thinking about military veterans, especially if they're newly left the service, they used to have kind of forced camaraderie. You were with the same people who all thought the same, not same way, similarly. They were all moving in the same direction and you had your group of people. And then if you retire, discharge, whatever the situation is, and you leave that, you left your group of people. You knew they understood what happened because they were there, or they at least had similar enough training to understand what was happening so I could go and talk to them. And now I left Georgia, California, Texas, and now I'm in the middle of Michigan with no one that I feel like understands or knows what I went through, and I'm just kind of isolated. So we also need to think about that when we're talking about it, because social support is literally the #1 factor in overcoming trauma. So if someone feels like they lost it and can't find it again, that's going to impact their recovery. All right, so I talked really fast. That's kind of just who I am. But that was just, did you have a question? Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Hi.
Claudia Davis from the local American Legion here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we try to tell people is that that social circle is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And when people join like VFW or American Legion, you're with your military buddies.
Yeah.
With people who understand. The spouses and family members we were mentioning earlier, what they have given. And that again is a community where people have a similar interest and it's a safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. So I'm a major cheerleader for American Legion. But I believe in it, and that's when I was invited to thought with the group putting this on, it's just like, yeah, that social connection. So very important.
Yeah, I mean, research shows it is literally the #1 factor. It is the most important thing in overcoming stress and trauma. So absolutely, it is very, very important. And that's why having places like American Legions, VFWs, all that kind of stuff, even the VA itself has a reputation sometimes, but it's also there as a service. Everyone's a veteran there. Like, that's kind of a condition of getting services there. So absolutely, finding either a veteran service of some sort or just finding someone. If you don't want to talk to other veterans, cool, that's your choice. But finding people that you are comfortable talking with, whoever that may be, and in whatever circle. Yep. Any other thoughts or questions? No? Okay, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Wade. We really appreciate your expertise in this, and thank you for being with us this evening. And I think you bring up a really good point about having the connection, which we hear about a lot, especially post-COVID and everything, but we've known that about our military folks for so long. And Isaac, would you mind just raising your hand? Isaac is a peer support specialist for Oakland County, and you have information about your group and everything at one of the tables, right? Okay, great. And it's on the website for Oakland County through CMH, and we appreciate you and what you're doing. So yes, if it's a formal process through counties or VSOs, nonprofits, there's lots of spaces, and we can hopefully link you up appropriately. So now we're gonna pose a few questions to our lovely panelists, our subject matter experts of the evening. We had some few subject matter experts earlier, but we thought it would be a nice touch to have some question and answer opportunities for these lovely folks. I am going to first, what I'd like to do, well, I guess we'll start from the top, and I know it's hard to read. Chris Cornelius, will you raise your hand? You are the founder of Fallen and Wounded Soldiers Fund and a veteran, and we thank you for being here. And you're also an Oakland County Reserve cop as well. Yep. Right. And, okay, would you add anything to that?
Nope, that sounds perfect.
Okay, great. And then we're going to bounce around. Dr. Robin Floyd, you are the director of the BHIP program, Behavioral Health Integration Program at the Detroit VA Medical Center. She's well established. She's been in mental health forever, and she is a gem. Would you add anything else to that? No. Mr. Kevin Scott, to her right, he is also a peer support specialist that is actually at the VA. The really cool thing about, I think, the military population is that we've learned that peer supports are really important, and they're embedded county, hospital, there are different places and spaces. I know a couple of even our groups, some of our coalitions are operating that way. And Kevin, you are a peer support specialist, you work with the courts, you do a number of things. Would you add anything else to that?
No, thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I'm gonna lean into my goofy. I asked all the panelists and the speakers for pictures because I was hoping to get pictures of them in their uniform, and Kevin was the only one, Mr. Scott was the only one who sent it to me, and I almost put yours in, but I didn't because I didn't want you to be the only one. But thank you for doing that. And Dr. Shakir, you have a host of lovely things. This font is really small, so I apologize. You are a child and adolescent psychiatrist, assistant clinical professor at Wayne State University. You are director of psychiatric services at Vista Maria Residential, medical director at the Cruz Clinic, board of directors for Farmington SAFE, which is hosting this event, as well as MIATSA, and I couldn't remember what that is. Would you mind sharing that with us?
That is Association for Treatment and Prevention of Sexual Abuse.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Would you add anything else to that title? No. No, okay. She is a wonder. We are all wonderful, and she's a wonder. So we thank you so much. So, Mr. Scott, I kind of warned you that I might be asking you a question first. So I wanted to, as a veteran yourself, working with veterans currently, you work at the hospital setting. What is something that you believe, a piece of advice that you would have really appreciated back when you were assimilating back to being a civilian?
That is a great question, and I assure you all that I did not pay her to ask that question to make me look good. It's so funny that you asked that question, Katrina Sears, because one thing that just happened, the connectivity that just happened with the dialogue from the presenters, connecting the dots that veterans go through. One thing that I wish I would have had in my transition, and one thing I will add that I didn't, I am currently a national sponsor. It's called an ETS, which is a enlisted transition serviceman sponsor. They just changed the name. What it is I sponsor veterans who are transitioning from active duty to the civilian world because data has shown, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Garassi has done this extensively, has shown that those 30 days are called the deadly gap. That is where the veterans run the highest risk of suicide, specifically from ages around 22 to 30. With that being said, Dr. Wade had mentioned about the military culture. It exists. It is real. It is tangible. It is palpable. That transitioning from the military to civilian society takes extensive work. If I would have had someone who could understand, because I know how to go to formation, I know how to be attention to detail. What I don't know how to do is go to the grocery store because I went to the child hall. What I don't know how to do is practice self-care because the military is not where we give care. We don't ask for care, we don't receive care, and a lot of us don't want care. So we have to learn how to accept this help coming from active military duty. Because a lot of us, especially males, our female veterans, they're a little bit different. But our male veterans, we find it very difficult to ask for this help. And the last thing that I will add, a lot of times, especially with my work, day in and day out with our military veterans, is there is no gray area for the military. What I mean by that is they either love it or they hate it. They either love the VA and the service they get, or they loathe it with a passion.
Well said. So one of the main things is that you're saying is having someone, and you're kind of pressing it on in our community as family, as just the community of Farmington Hills, that being there for our folks, and also being willing to connect with them, and even if it may be difficult, you didn't say this, but I'm going to take it, they're giving them the space that they might need, because I don't want help, I don't need it, I'm uncomfortable because I'm always the one giving it, maybe just giving them that extra cushion during that period of time, but just reminding them that you're there.
That's what I just want to add one last piece.
Please.
You made an excellent point, young lady, right there when you spoke. See, there's three things that we as veterans leave or lose when we transition from active military. We lose a sense of belonging, we lose a sense of purpose, and we lose our identity. Because we knew who we were. We knew what unit we had. We knew what we did. We knew our job, and we knew our purpose. We leave all that behind the moment we come home.
Purpose is it's a human thing, but it becomes so highlighted in those moments for our folks that and that's part of the survival that Dr. Wade was speaking about, right? All of that helped you survive and thrive in your circumstance that you were in, whether you're in combat or whether you were, serving in another space, and then translating that to this type of universe can be very challenging. Thank you, Mr. Scott. I appreciate that. Mr. Cornelius, since you are as well a combat veteran, founder of a nonprofit that serves veterans, and you are serving as a reserve cop in this county, which is super cool too, along Dr. Wade, would you add anything to what Mr. Scott said? Would you want to say anything different to families or community members about how to support?
What he's talking about with the stress that the veterans have, we have a lot of veterans that we've helped over the years. And by the way, we help out an average of, last year we helped out 400 veterans and their family. The year before it was 500 veterans and their family. And we're a pretty immediate response. So somebody can go on our website, and I'll segue back into this, and I just, but we respond pretty quickly, and it's kind of like that support mechanism. And a big thing that I see, we started doing this. We have an annual event, and about 900 people show up, and it's really about just honoring veterans. It's a fundraiser, but it's about veterans getting to be able to come in and as we're talking, as Kevin's talking about PTSD. We'll get a veteran up there, and they'll start talking, and you can always look around and see the veterans that have experienced combat, that have PTSD. So it's really one of the big takeaways from those events and helping the veterans is not only it's that the peers and the peer support, but recognizing them, and it's really nice. It's not just a thank you for your service, because they get a lot of those. It's a Vietnam veteran. I get a little emotional on these things. He gets up and he starts speaking, and he talks about being in Vietnam and loading a friend onto a helicopter. And as he was loading his friend on the helicopter, who was injured more than he was already hit twice, that as that helicopter began to take off, that he was hit by an RPG and he lost his arm. When he comes back, now imagine this, nothing. There's no peer support. Back then the VA was a lot different than what it is now. And he got up there and he said something very important. He goes, "I never thought I'd be recognized for this." And he broke down, and I'm about to break down. So being here, you all doing what you're doing, just showing support, everything you do, it's huge. It's everything to these veterans.
Well, thank you for that. And it's good to be reminded, because we have so many different eras of veterans that we serve in the different spaces that we're in, and to remember that each era has unique experiences, and we never know what they left, what they're walking in with. And you never know when that one moment is going to be important, whether it's recognizing them even at a restaurant and just, genuinely saying, "Thank you so much, we appreciate you," and, giving them the time in that space is important, so thank you.
And as an organization, we're lucky to be there because, we have the VSOs who work very hard. We have the VHA, the VBA. All that takes time, though, and it's very confusing. And if you don't do it exactly right, as a 100% service-disabled veteran, I've walked through those hurdles, especially at doing it later on in life is very difficult as the problems that you've had. So having a good veteran service officer that will direct you through that, and then we kind of are the immediate needs. We're the ones where, and if we get the thank you notes and it says we didn't have anybody else to turn to. We were going to get evicted, right? Kids, no food. So, yeah.
We need all the pieces to wrap around our veterans and our service members. Yes. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Dr. Shakir, you work with a lot of families and a lot of veterans and just a lot of different spaces, and you're very familiar with patterns and data. Are there certain trends that you see that would be helpful for the greater community to be aware of, or certain triggers that may impact different times of year, or what do you think Farmington needs to know?
So, you know, I'm going to follow up with what Dr. Megan was explaining. And, you know, before I go into specific triggers, I think what we need to think about is what really makes a stimulus, what makes something so simple a trigger. And what it is that, you know, part of that lizard brain, you know, we have a very tiny part of our brain, which is called amygdala, which we also call the fire station of our brain. And what happens is that anytime there's something, and it can be something very simple, that gets paired with a trauma response or is considered to be traumatic, it becomes a trauma memory, and it can trigger the same kind of responses again and again when the same stimulus happens. So, like, for example, you know, firework that can be perceived, even though a person may be aware that it's fireworks, but in that moment, a veteran may get triggered to thinking that there is, you know, there are guns going off, and it's not fireworks, but actually, you know, may have a flashback of the combat experience. And that can be very, very devastating because, you know, think about a veteran who wants to celebrate 4th of July with his kids and have barbecue outside, you know? And it's very hard to explain to the children that, okay, I'm paranoid and I'm hiding in the basement. It's not because of you. It's because I cannot tolerate certain sounds, okay? The same way there are certain sounds, certain smells. It could be bright lights. It could be being in a crowd, which can be very overwhelming. And that, you know, especially people who've had trauma, certain stimuli become very overwhelming. So something like, you know, Christmas, and there's a crowd of people, and it's a happy occasion. Think about it, you know, attending somebody's wedding, happy occasion. But it's not that the person is unhappy about the happy occasion. What it is that what's going on, the confusion, the chaos that's going around, which is actually a symbol of happiness, becomes a symbol, you know, becomes something very distressful and distressing for the person. So, you know, holidays, important events in a person's life can become very triggering for those reasons. The couple other, you know, in addition to specific triggers, one of the things that happens with people, including veterans who've had trauma, is that they develop, you know, they kind of get disconnected from the emotions and feelings. So what ends up happening is they start having this difficulty experiencing emotion. They feel numb, they feel cold inside. And what happens then is they also feel disengaged from people. Many times they're not able to, you know, many times families, when you work with families, it's like, you know, my husband's no longer the same. You know, we're not connected, we're not intimate. It's like he's in another world. And what it is that difficulty connecting. Now think about a group of people who's congratulating you for an award you got, and you really don't feel it in your heart to feel connected to those people. You know, other things is, you know, what was mentioned was moral injury. You're celebrating, you know, you're put in a position where you're celebrating life when you've taken some. Again, it was not your personal wish to do it, but that was your duty. That was, in that situation, you had to do it, you know? The last point that I will make in terms of what can make certain occasions difficult is that trauma does not just cause PTSD, it also causes a lot of other mental illness. It makes people prone to having other mental illness. And many times, it can become very difficult, especially if those mental illnesses are not treated, it can become very difficult, So as Mr. Scott said, purpose of life, there is a psychiatrist, psychologist, psychoanalyst a while ago, Dr. Viktor Frankl, and he did a lot of work on, and he talked about purpose of life. And the story is that he was actually for 3 years in a concentration camp. And he saw people losing hope, and he saw people dying, and he kept on going. And he didn't even know that in the very next camp, his wife was there who actually died a few months before he was released. And for him, what it was that when he was brought to the concentration camp, he had a draft of part of a manuscript for the book that he was writing. And, the Nazi soldiers, they took it from him and tore it. So what he did was he would find pieces of paper to write it, because his thing was, I want to write a manuscript. And when I get out, I'm gonna get that published. And that is what kept him going. And he realized that what he noticed was that people who were who were losing that purpose, why should I be alive? Were not able to stay alive. So it's very important to have that purpose. When we don't have that purpose, whether we are, we've had trauma or not, whether we've had, combat experience or not having a purpose, kills you inside. So always striving for that. And with my patients, that's what I tell them. What is one thing you're gonna live for? And then, once they start feeling that, especially, and I also talk to them about being proactive. Having these, if they know that this is how they're gonna be triggered, then being proactive, being prepared. I know I'm gonna get triggered with fireworks. I'm gonna prepare my brain so that I'm not freaking out when that happens. Not as much, at least. So that's just allowing oneself to get unstuck. And the only thing that can allow ourselves to get unstuck is if we have something to work towards. So yeah, my 2 cents. They were long 2 cents, but.
It was a lovely 2 cents, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure many other people appreciate it. And just to kind of take what you said a little bit, trauma response and any kind of healing from anything, any kind of mental health recovery, depression, trauma, it's not a linear process. And I think that's where sometimes, maybe last 4th of July or last Christmas, it was fine. So now I think I'm okay for the next, but then it catches me off guard. And to be aware, I think number one is really important. And to, whether it's that buddy you have, your peer support group leader or your battle buddy, or, even your neighbor, just say, hey, this isn't a great time of year if I start to, if the lawn's not cut and you don't hear me answer the door, don't freak out, informing the people around you that, hey, I just might need a little more space. I might come, just taking care of yourself is what you're speaking
Katrina,
about.
can I comment
Please,
just real quick?
Mr. Scott, yes.
First, Dr. Shakur, just thank you so much. Chris, you said you got emotional earlier talking about this, and as a veteran, you mentioned Viktor Frankl. The name of the book is Man's Search for Meaning. In 1992, the Library of Congress awarded that one of the most influential books in the world. I happened to read that book. It was life-changing. It helped me deal with so much trauma, suppressed trauma, undigested trauma, unpalatable trauma that resides in our reptilian brain, in our amygdala, deep down inside. There was another book that I read recently, a couple years back, that also helped me understand, far as you talked about, because this is nonlinear, but far as the totality and the comprehensive nature of the neurological healing from trauma. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's book,
Body keeps the
Body
score.
keeps the score, the mind, body, and soul of healing. One of the greatest books, again, for me, that I have read, and the point I'm trying to make is that if you're not constantly developing your professional acuity, obviously, which you are, Dr. Shakur, Dr. Wade, that you are, and I'm quite sure I'm going to hear from my good friend, Dr. Floyd, as well. If you're not building on that, we are doing these people we serve an injustice, and I'm telling you, you're looking at a concentrated, tangible benefit of the work that these people have done. So I just want to thank all of you.
Appreciate it. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for what you've done, and I appreciate your willingness to, I respect you working with you at the VA, but I haven't heard so much of your story, and I appreciate that, so thank you for sharing. And I want to be cognizant of the time, but I did have a question for Dr. Robin Floyd, who is near and dear to my heart. She's been working in mental health for quite some time, and recently got her doctorate.
2 years ago.
Huh?
2 years ago, yes.
2 years ago. Okay, so not too recently. But anyway, I know that you have a passion for this space, and you're very aware of new developments within our system. And we've talked, Chris graciously mentioned that the VA is trying to, we have moved and we're expanding. Bill, Mr. Browning spoke about all the expansion of services. So we are doing things, and I know that you wanted to speak a little bit about some of the things that we're doing to really wrap around our veterans in some of these ways that we've spoken about. Would you mind doing that?
So what I wanted to speak about is, we already declared that the VA, yes, is a complex system. It's one that really you need support to help navigate the services. With our veterans, there's similarities, but each veteran's they're individuals as well. We look at veterans as a whole person. So when it comes to veterans and just the variables of what type of needs that they need. So with that being said, we look at structured care. We look at the patient-centered focus when it comes to our veterans. One thing I love about the VA is we are centered, our care centered towards caring for veterans. So we know that it's specialized care that they need. So with that being said, so our BHIP teams, which is our Behavioral Health Integrated Program teams, they're specialized teams that consist of a psychiatrist, a psych nurse, a social worker. We have, auxiliaries that deals with, our psychologists, that handles PTSD, our military sexual trauma. We have all type of services with case management, care management for veterans who need to just that added support to stay engaged in treatment. We have all type of initiatives, new initiatives to move towards like suicide prevention, and just really just keeping our patients engaged in treatment at whatever cost that is. We are striving very hard at Detroit VA, and I'll say all the VAs to, bring this centered approach that we have the veteran, the family, and the providers, as we moving forward to give them the best treatment, and just keep them engaged, as I stated. So with the structured care, we can help navigate and provide the services that's needed as far as, your mental health services, your benefits, legal and peer support, group therapy, one-on-one therapy, whatever is needed. So moving forward, we just have a lot of detailed services to just really help the veteran to support them with their functionality and, whatever it takes for us to keep you, towards your recovery.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd. I appreciate that. And we're about to come to a close, and I just wanted to see, did any of the panelists have anything else they want to add to our last takeaways for the group before we wrap up this evening?
Thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity, and anybody has any questions, I'm here for you. I'm sure everybody else is too.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
There is a YouTube video, it's called 15 Things Every Veteran Wants You to Know. It would behoove you to go take a look at that. It's from Psych Armor. Dr. Kraft is the clinical director of that. Very informative YouTube video.
Thank you. Love that tangible piece. Dr. Shakir?
I'm just going to add that, you know, sometimes it may feel for a person that it's so difficult to get unstuck, but it is possible, and it does happen. You know, sometimes it takes time, but it is possible. So not to hesitate getting help, because, you know, feeling unstuck in that time, it can be quite uncomfortable, and sometimes we lose hope that things will not get better. So always, if you're not able to hope for yourself or feel it, just feel hope from other people who are hoping for you. And maybe, you know, make an effort. It is hard to make an effort. I acknowledge that, but it's worth it.
Thank you. Dr.
Last piece I would like to say, any past negative experiences or myths that you know, might have heard regarding the VA, or just dealing with veterans in general. So moving forward, just, you know, I would say just trust the VA, and trust just the treatment that's out there for veterans. You know, give us the opportunity to show that our care delivery, we are really geared towards, you know, quality improvement and just moving forward with patient satisfaction and just improving your experiences.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd. I appreciate that. And if not, you can call Gary Easterling, where he's somewhere, and he's in the back. Thank you, Miss Mariani. He is the families, yes. So there are resources. And sometimes the VA, you know, we can link you if it's a nonprofit or if it's a service officer. You know, we have a web that we can assist you with. So at this time, we're going to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for being in this space and this place with us. Be good to yourselves, take some snacks, and we're going to wrap up. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.